If anyone ever believed that political contests could not potentially increase in ferocity, lively competition is ushered in by Nigel Farage's masterclass on deftly shredding opponents and cleverly evading accusations of historical guilt, while some wild accusations just take the air. And I must say, this debate goes up and down with accusations, defences, and that kind of audience contribution that makes you ponder, how did we get here? Let's dissect it. And yes, I'm bringing my sarcasm hat along. The question on the table: how do we balance border control, diversity, and pressure on local services? To that, Farage basically said, why are we even talking about diversity? Who cares? Not in those terms, but close enough. And let's be honest, his take was as blunt as a hammer. Diversity isn't the problem, integration is. And for Farage, integration means fewer people crossing borders in the first place. Subtle, not his style. Then came the Conservative MP, probably wishing he was somewhere else. He starts off saying, yes, we have messed up immigration, then just keeps saying it. Honestly, it's not like you even find politicians conceding this much, but by the end, I half expected him to start sobbing and asking for forgiveness. Nigel, of course, smelled blood in the water. Shame on you, he thundered, presenting the Tory failures with a gusto that suggests he has rehearsed this speech in front of a mirror a few dozen times. He even called their promises willful, deceptive, and deliberate. Ouch. Get that man some ice for his political burns.
Certain Adolf Hitler was elected. And if we follow the same rhetoric, the same blaming of migrants, we will go in the same way. And the future of that path is very, very bleak.
And then, boy, silly crowd. A guy who just returned from the Holocaust Memorial stood first, and this time he was not there for games. His argument? The UK immigration rhetoric is dangerously skirting home to 1930s Germany. Bold assertion, he was preparing to back it with feelings. Many of them. Farage, however, corresponded to it. He fired a sarcastic rebuke at it, and honestly, you could almost hear the internal groan of the viewers at home. Here we go again, his expression seemed to say.
The last Labour government deported people who came here illegally in their tens of thousands.
But do you want to respond to Sam's point?
I'm going to. Tens of thousands. So here's the point. The point is, if people come legally and they work, that's fine. If people come because they're genuinely refugees, we've always opened our doors as a country more than anybody in the world.
But then back to the real thing. Farage versus the red sweater guy. The Holocaust reference kept spinning about, Mr. Red Sweater insisting that scapegoating migrants is only a repeat of 1930s Germany, while Nigel was practically rolling his eyes out of his skull, as he might ask, how many books have you read on the Third Reich? But instead, he just shut it down with that combination of sarcasm and indignation. Classic Farage.
Tens of thousands of undocumented young males crossing the English Channel are not refugees in any classic sense of the word. And my fear is, since the time of the last Labour government, the European Court has become more activist. We must deport people who are not refugees, who come to Britain illegally. Is only fair and
We've
reasonable
increased the number of returns.
So
can I just already increased the number of returns.
So
can I just
So you do not agree with
Things got really spicy when Farage went straight for the jugular with statistics. The announcement that only 16% of the 2 million non-EU migrants are working, he thundered, while blaming the government for ruining communities and services. If that was not enough, he added some good, old-fashioned economic doom into the mix. Mass immigration is making Britain poorer. Subtlety is not his strong suit.
The problem with welcoming diversity is if you do it in too big a level, you get division. And we're seeing that in many of our towns.
There was, however, no real defence from the MP.
The last 2 million that came from outside the EU under your watch, only 16% of them are working.
Just provisions of vague promises about numbers being reduced.
Only 16% of that 2 million are working, which means they're dependents, which means they're using schools, the health service, all of these things. And we now know the truth.
A string slap of, "We are working on it." This was politically equivalent to, "We are doing our best," while everyone else watched and said, "Is your best good enough?" Spoiler, it's not.
In the United States, Donald Trump, who I know Nigel's very, very fond of, and I do think, I'm making a serious point here, Nigel, I do think the language
And then, of course, came the obligatory comparison.
that Donald Trump used about immigrants, they were all vermin.
Trump. What else would one expect in the immigration debate without throwing in the orange elephant in the room?
They were all poisoning our blood. That was straight out.
That is outrageous, Alistair, and you know it.
A member of the panel pointed out that some of the language from Trump concerning immigrants.
No, it's not. Why is
That
that
is
outrageous?
outrageous.
Because you believe in immigration controls.
Trump is
doesn't mean you're
pro.
racist.
No, I'm not saying it is.
Trump is very pro-legal.
Referring to them as vermin and poisoning our blood would be pretty similar to that heard in the 1930s. Farage exploded, terming the accusation an outrage. To be fair, he had a point though. Trump is a lot of things, but not a hater of legal immigrants and illegal ones. Not at all. One of the best moments came when Farage went in on the government record. He hammered them for letting down pledges on reducing migration, with the numbers almost close to 1 million. "You haven't got a cat's chance in hell of winning the next general election," he declared. Savage.
We've done it with Jewish people, Huguenots. We've always done it, but we cannot do it in unlimited numbers. And what is happening right now, sir, are not genuine refugees.
Then, just as you thought there couldn't be any more chaos, the panel begins debating what kind of migrants are coming in. They're asylum seekers, economic migrants, or just people looking for a better life. Nigel, of course, has from way before had a firm view. The majority of them are not refugees. He even went so far as to question whether people should have allowed others from Ukraine and Hong Kong entry, and this earned him serious side-eye from the MP.
It cannot solve the problems of this entire planet. There will be hundreds of millions of people who want to come to the UK because we're a great country. That's why people want to come, and I understand that.
The debate finally careened chaotical toward its end, with more interruptions, more shouting, and more statistics flying around than anyone could possibly keep track of. The MP insisted the government tightened things, but Nigel wasn't buying it. "You've failed," he declared, and honestly, you could almost hear the cheers from his supporters at home. So what is the summation of this fiery debate? Well, for one, Nigel Farage knows how to dominate a stage. Love him or hate him, you can't deny he has the rhetorical chops to make his opponents squirm. The Conservatives, meanwhile, appear to have given up trying to defend themselves and are just hoping to ride out the storm. And for audience contributions, we could just say they were memorable. Holocaustedly compared to some enthusiastic defences of migrants, that reminds us that immigration is currently one of the most divisive topics within the public arena. And though the debate may not have achieved its purpose, it has become interesting TV. If anything, this debate was just a reminder of how far we still have to go to see real solutions on this one. But hey, at least it was entertaining. Good, bad, or ugly, that is politics.